Hello y'all, and welcome back. So I'd like you to imagine the following scenario. You wake up in the morning and you have a small cut on your thumb. Not even a cut, a scratch. And it's about a ½ inch long. Now, it doesn't matter who you are, the first thing you're going to think is, how did that get there? How'd that get there? This might not be a consuming thought. Even if it's a mystery, you might not even rise to the level where you ask the person you live with how it got there. But you're still going to think, how'd that scratch get there? But you'll probably get over it after a day, and the scratch will be gone, you'll forget about it. Now supposing the next morning you wake up, and you head out to your car, and there on the driver's side door of your car, right beneath the handle, is a 2-foot long scratch. Big scratch dug right into the side of the car. Now, this is a much more serious thing than the scratch on your thumb, but the response that you have is going to be the exact same. You're going to think, how did that get there? And it's going to be a lot more intense. I know for me it would certainly be a lot more intense than for the little scratch on your thumb. You think, how did that get there? And in this situation, if you were to talk to somebody, you're certainly going to be asking around, do you see anybody keying my car? Do I have any enemies? Did anyone say that they were going to get me? This kind of thing. At least this is what I would be thinking. But if somebody were to respond to you, well, look, hey, just take it easy. Who could know something like that, right? Who could answer that question? There are some things you just can't know, and you just got to get used to it. You might be indignant. You might be a little offended. You might say, well, who can know something like that? I can know something like that, and I actually intend to know something like that. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to figure this out. So it would be a pretty big deal for you. No, it would be for me. Now imagine the next morning you wake up, and instead of a scratch on your thumb or on your car, there's an enormous trench that's just been dug, a 100-foot long trench that's been dug in the ground in front of your dwelling place. The road has just been completely carved up, and it's a 10-foot wide, 100-foot long trench, like some enormous steel claw just dug down into the earth and raked it up. And there's all these cars that are smashed. It's clearly not a construction project because it's done damage. It's like something out of a monster movie. Now, again, this is a bigger deal. This is a bigger deal than the scratch on your thumb, or even, with respect to your car, the scratch on your car. But again, you'd have the exact same response. You'd think, how did that get there? And this would be consuming. And now, all of a sudden, it's not just your morning that's kind of taken thinking about this. This is like your whole day. Like it's really important to figure this out. Like, is there some monster on the loose? Is there some enormous robot? Like, how on earth did this thing get there? This would be a pressing question, and nobody would think to say, well, look, who can know a thing like that? Sometimes we just don't know things. People would be like, we're going to get to the bottom of this because our safety probably depends on it. We're going to figure this out. Well, now suppose that the next morning you walk out the front door of your house, and there in front of you is something that is way bigger than the scratch on your thumb, the scratch on the side of your car, or this enormous trench dug in the road. Imagine that this thing is enormous. It's the size of the universe. Matter of fact, it is the universe. Now, does this change at all your initial reaction? To think, how did that get there? Well, two things are true here. First, the answer is yes, it does change your initial reaction because the vast majority of people don't ever wonder that about the universe, which is really strange. Because the second thing that's true is you should. In fact, you should have that much more pressing curiosity about the universe, as the universe is larger than the trench dug into the ground in front of your house, or the scratch in your car, or the scratch in your thumb, right? If you wonder about this trench, if it consumes your thinking, so too you should just be consumed with curiosity about the universe and how it gets there. But we're not. Now, the fact that we're not is a concern about us and the activity of our minds. But the fact that we have a desire, in other cases, in other situations, to find answers, to seek explanations for things' existences, is important. And it can be summed up in a principle that in the scientific and philosophical literature is known as the principle of sufficient reason. And the principle of sufficient reason states that every existing thing has an explanation for its existence. Every existing thing has an explanation for its existence. This principle grounds not just all of science and technology and medicine and inquiry, but it grounds all of human thought. And if, in the course of a scientific investigation, you were to deny this principle, then you would be faced with the possibility that there's really no cause or explanation at all for the phenomenon you're exploring. Not one that you can't find, not a really difficult one to find, not an elusive one, not a secret one, but none whatsoever. And of course, if you were to countenance that as a possibility, all scientific inquiry would grind to a halt like right now, because there'd be no point in pressing on, no point in using any more funding, no point in using any more of your time or your emotional energy or your mental energy in trying to seek the answer to a difficult question, because of course there's a possibility that you're just wasting your time. But we don't do that. And we don't do that because the principle of sufficient reason is, quite frankly, true. Not just true, but foundational. And it's not just foundational to all of human thought. It's foundational to the argument that we're going to be looking at in this module. In these next series of videos, we're going to be looking at the cosmological argument for God's existence, which begins with the principle of sufficient reason. It begins with this basic idea that every existing thing has an explanation for its existence, that we ought to wonder about this, that we wonder about this for a reason, and that the thing that we're wondering about now is the universe and its existence. So in the next video, we're going to look at the way that one formulation of the cosmological argument takes shape based on this principle. Thanks.